Hello everybody, this is me, the Undead Viking, and I'm here to tell you some RPG stories today. If you looked at the title of the video, I stated there, these are two situations in which players cheated or lied to me when I was the DM, and how I handled it then, and how I should have handled it now with the ability to have the 2020 hindsight and looking back. I plan on doing more of these videos. I know if you followed this channel for a long time, I've often said this where I wanted to focus more on RPG content, but this is where like my passion of tabletop gaming lies. I was an RPG gamer long before I was a board gamer. Board gaming is still a fantastic hobby and I love it to death. Obviously I work in the industry now, but this is where like I guess the roots of my passions lie for D&D, other role-playing games, Call of Cthulhu, GURPS, all those things, and I hope to be doing at least one of these videos like fairly often, you know, like at least once a week or so, just to kind of tell you like some quick RPG stories and stuff that maybe if you are a referee or a judge or a game master or a dungeon master or whatever you want to call it, perhaps maybe I can assist you a little bit in how to handle these things. All right, so I'm going to tell two different stories. And I haven't really decided on a structure. I'm kind of going, I'm doing a little fly-by-night thing here. I also have my beanbag 20-sided die here that I got this as like a grab bag or something like that, but I've had it for years, and it's like one of my favorite, like just when my hands need something to do, this is what I reach for. But regardless, so one of the stories I'm going to tell you about stemmed from, this is probably back in like first edition D&D. I was playing in my buddy Shad's basement, his parents' house. It was either like a sleepover, hey, we're going to play D&D all weekend kind of thing when I was in junior high. So that would put this in the very early 80s, 1980, 81 or so. And I'm trying to remember if we were playing, like Beck Me, Basic Expert, if you know what that is, Beck Me Dungeons and Dragons. We were either playing that or we were playing Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. I don't remember exactly which. But I had a situation here where I was DMing. I don't remember the super specifics, but the players were battling some goblins, and the goblins were riding wolves. And Shad's character, who was a fighter of some type, he got hit by a wolf or a goblin, doesn't matter which. I said it does 6 points of damage. He says, I dropped to the ground. That's what he said. Just, I dropped to the ground. I was like, all right. And we used miniatures back then. Not a lot of people did use miniatures back then, but we did. Not like specifically to state where we were or like however like that, but just basically to give some sort of idea of where, like, how the battle was commencing. Like, these goblins are over here, this wizard's over there, that sort of thing. And so the next round came up, we rolled for initiative, the goblins won. They moved past where Shad's fighter was and went to go on attack somebody else. And then when the player's turn came up, Shad said, I get up off the ground and I go and attack like the goblin leader who was hiding behind everybody, right? And so it turns out what Shad did was he basically fooled me. He said, because I don't keep track of his hit points, he keeps track of his hit points. And I said I do 6 points of damage. He had like 12 or 18 hit points, whatever. He said he fell to the ground, and I assumed, okay, he's dead or unconscious or however we handled it back then. And then he sprang up and he was able to like go and attack the goblin priest or whatever it was. And at the time I was furious. I was just like, what? What do you can't lie. I'm in charge of the world. You have to tell me exactly what happens to your character. You don't get to just pull a fast one on me. And I mean, we got into a huge argument at the table. And then like I think what I handled it back then was I said, we have to back everything up to that point, and we have to make, if you're going to drop to the ground and pretend you're dead, then you're going to have to like make a d20 roll like against, I think we said like his charisma, I think it was, which of course was his dump stat, and I actually appreciated that. But we had to make it basically in an effort to like convince the goblins that he wasn't truly dead. And of course he blew the rule, and the goblins proceeded to keep stabbing him when he was on the ground, and I thought that was fair. Now, here's the deal. If I could do that whole thing, well, see, that wouldn't, first of all, that wouldn't happen now if you're playing, 3rd edition D&D or 4th or 5th or Pathfinder or whatever. We have all kinds of rules. We have all kinds of things that govern, and it's not necessarily bad. I mean, maybe that's a video I'll talk about later, as far as whether or not, like, things have gotten too complex or whatever. And I don't really have I'm not going to get into that. I'm gonna take a step away. So, but here's the deal. It was like, he fooled me. He used gamesmanship to be able to put his character into an advantageous position, and I should have rewarded that. He wasn't cheating. He was just trying something on the fly and trying something new, and he wanted to just, like I said, pull a fast one on me, pull a fast one on the goblins that I was running. And I should have rewarded him for that. I should have allowed him to feel intelligent and smart and cool about what was going on. And also, that would have taught me, as the dungeon master, to like pay attention to what my players are saying and doing more. And I would have then, like, if, here's the deal, if there was this old Steve Jackson Games put out this like old thing called Man to Man, I think it was called. It was like it was the predecessor to I think it was called Fantasy Trip. Yeah, it is Fantasy Trip. I'm like, yeah, it's just there, and I'm looking over here at my bookshelf. Yeah, that's Fantasy Trip. But anyway, Man to Man was a combat system, and in that, like, they had a paragraph that actually said something like, if you're fighting somebody and you're on the ground and you pick up a handful of sand and you throw it in the person's face or whatever, that's cool, and like it's a clever little thing you can do. Maybe it gives you a moment of respite or whatever, and you can gather your wits. Maybe you can make a getaway kind of thing. And they said, but it shouldn't work all the time, because if throwing sand in somebody's faces was like the thing to do, people wouldn't carry swords around. They carry bags of sand wherever they went. And I thought that was funny. I've always remembered that. So here's the deal. Pretending to be killed after you get hit by an attack shouldn't work all the time. Otherwise, basically every single person that when something falls to the ground after being stabbed, they would take 2 or 3 more rounds to keep stabbing every single person to make sure, or like carry on stethoscopes or something to check for heartbeats. But the thing is that he long story short, he tricked me. And he rightfully pulled a clever trick, something that could have really hurt him. If like I was wise to what he said, where like he says I dropped to the ground, and I was like, let me see your character sheet, and then look and see that he's still got 12 hit points left, and I said, okay, fine. Now they jump on top of you and stab you to death. He took a risk, and I should have rewarded it as the player, and we should have, instead of having a giant argument that I think lasted like at least a half hour of what we should have done. And ultimately what I did was I took away a player's enjoyment of the game, and I shouldn't, if they're clever and they pull one over on me, I should be just as willing to let that person enjoy that moment as much as I should enjoy as a dungeon master my ability to like trick or pull one, like having a really cool riddle or a trap that the players succumb to, right? I mean, so it goes both ways. So that's the first story. I mean, I wouldn't say he cheated, but he basically went outside the box, and I handled it poorly. And so there you go. Now here's the second one. Now this was 3rd edition D&D, because I remember exactly that it was 3rd edition D&D. And this one wasn't exactly so much cheating as it was like a circumvention of a the processes of 3rd edition by use of meticulous knowledge of the rules. And that's kind of a long explanation, but here, let me tell you the story quick and you'll understand. Now, and again, I don't really blame the player so much for this one. I blame the player more for this one than the preceding story. But for this one, this is also on me as the Dungeon Master. Running a 3rd edition campaign, don't remember what it was all about anymore, but it was one of those things where I've always liked treasure tables. I've always liked the idea of like a random powerful treasure, even if it's a 1% chance that like a 5,000 gold piece gem shows up in like the kobold treasure hoard. I mean, I always loved that idea, and then that could be a whole story surrounding that, like that special little gem. Like all the kobolds like worship it or something because they know they have something super cool. And so I've always liked random creation of treasure. I think it's one of those things where it takes it allows for a story to kind of develop. It's like, how did that treasure even get there to begin with? But it's one of those things where it allows in these editions of D&D lately, everything's so very structured and everything is in its little column or box or whatever, that like we kind of forget that like life is chaotic and you don't really know what to expect. But where I'm going with this is that I rolled randomly for treasure. I don't know what they fought. I don't know what they killed. I don't remember any of the particulars. But I do remember there was like a magical. It was either an amulet, a magical amulet that I rolled for, or it was like bracers or something along those lines. And whatever it was, it like improved stats. It was like, amulet of charisma +2 or something like that. Let's just say it was that. So it was a thing back then. Like, how do we identify? It still is kind of. I've always thought that like identifying a magic item should be more difficult than it is. But it was one of those things too where they were like, okay, well, we need to identify this, and it cost a little bit of money back then. You needed like a certain like magical component or whatever to do it, and so we were like, okay, we're you find this they wizard like this wizard character like detects magic. Okay, yeah, this amulet's magical. It isn't just like a a necklace of something or other. And the rule stated that detect magic, if you concentrated and you made like a spellcraft check, you could tell what school of magic that it was from. That you were looking at and what you could tell. And so he concentrated. He knew what school of magic it was. So he says, okay, I know what kind of magic was used to create this amulet. And so I went in and I looked and I was like, okay, and I can't, somebody can probably comment and tell me exactly, but I don't remember what it was. It was like abjuration or, like, who knows? But whatever it was, okay, yeah, you concentrate. It's this type of magic. And he said, okay, it's an amulet of charisma. Who wants it? That's exactly what he said. And I was like, well, how do you know what it is? And he's like, because it's from that school of magic, and the only amulets that show up from that school of magic from that are amulets of charisma. He's like, it's in the DMG. That's all it can be. And I was just kind of like, I was like super annoyed. I was just like, no. You don't just get to that. I was like, you know what? The amulet doesn't exist. I was annoyed. It was towards the end of the session. I was like, you don't just get to like, because that's the only amulet that ever exists. It's an amulet of charisma, that kind of thing. And admittedly, I handled it poorly. I was like, you know what? The amulet doesn't exist then. Because you just had to be Mr. Smarty, I know all the rules guy. The amulet's gone. Nobody gets it. And which was the wrong way to handle it. Because once again, it wasn't necessarily cheating, but what it was just a cheesy removal of the immersiveness of the game and just saying, hey, let's just completely take ourselves out of the role-playing aspect of this game and let's then just like apply these strict matter-of-fact rules to the system, and that's exactly what it was. Now, this one I've thought about for a while, And I know I handled it wrong, right? I mean, like that, just saying it just doesn't exist anymore. I mean, that's garbage. I shouldn't have done that. You know, that was me being vindictive to that player, and being vindictive in a way that was basically like, nobody in the party gets that magic item, and it's your fault. It's your fault the party doesn't get the magic item, so now I've turned everybody against you because you have to be Mr. Smarty Pants. And that's not helping anybody have a good time, right? I mean, you know, you don't want to come and sit down with your friends and then have them be annoyed with you about why, you know, they don't get, you know, the you know, why the bard doesn't get the Amulet of Charisma +2. You know what I mean? Because, you know, that stinks. So I've thought about this for a while, and what I should have done, one, is I should have allowed for more options as far as magic items are concerned. In recent years when I played, I've stopped just giving out swords +1, right? I have one, made magic items really, really rare in the campaigns that I run, and two, I make those magic items really, really unique, and having them be both like a boon and a curse. Like finding something like a little button that you can just punch and it glows like a candle or something. That's relatively minor. That's fine. I'll have you have those all day long. But to find a sword that's like magical, that will help you defeat certain enemies or something like that, I make it so like there's a process that you have to go through to make that sword work for you. And I'm not just talking about like 5e attuning yourself to the sword or anything like that. I'm talking about like, oh, you need to research what this sword is. You need to find out why it was created. You need to find out that you need to make a dutiful prayer to this long lost god of the earth and give thanks to them every single morning, so that sword will imbue itself with that magic. You know, like make a process, you know, create the world and make the world bigger and deeper, and then have like long lasting ramifications for that too. Like if you run into some weird like small group of followers of that long lost earth god, like have them look at the sword as like some sort of artifact and have them want to like take it from the player, you know, things like that, where you can definitely like just expand upon the world and have a lot of fun with that. So the way I should have done is I should have been prepared better back then, and just not allow just the same standard, charisma, amulets of charisma +2. Just don't have those really like exist left and right. Don't have magic shops that have them on, here, check out my rack of magic items you have over here. What would you like? Remove those from like existence and actually have very specific, very powerful things that the players know that come both with boons and burdens that come with them. Now, going back to that time, what I should have done is I just should have said, you know what, fine, have the Amulet of Charisma. From now on, I'm not going to allow spellcraft to do what you're using it for, and learn from that, and just make a house rule, because you shouldn't be able to circumvent like the way the rules are written by using some sort of loophole in the rules as well. And this player, his name was Matt. I mean, he was the guy that like sat on message boards and forums and things like that. Even back then, even back when 3rd edition had just been released, and he would sit on there and he would dig through those things, and he would find these little things because other people would post them, or he would find them himself. And he was a good player, and he's a good friend. He's still somebody that even though he lives like in Colorado now and doesn't live near me and everything, it's still somebody I correspond with on a regular basis. And I just handled it wrong. I should not have been angry at him for trying to take advantage of a rule system that just had loopholes. And to be honest, he probably shouldn't have done it too. Just you have to be a good dungeon master, but you also have to help the dungeon master be a good dungeon master by being a good player. And you know what? I think that sounds like a pretty good video. I think I'll do one relatively soon about how to be a good player and help your dungeon master be a good dungeon master. But anyway, so this is, as I'm going to call it, I'm going to Tales from Behind the Screen. As you can see, I have the screen set up here. This was actually the most recent thing I played in this table was playing D&D with my family. So that's why I have this screen up. And I just had this idea for this video today. And yeah, I expect more of these in the future. If there's some time when you've played a game where a player like cheated, and I'm not talking about the guys that like roll the 20-sided die and then they go and they snatch it up for anybody can see it. I got a 17. You know, it's like it's always a 17, right? It's just good enough to be good, but like and like to make sure that they succeed, but not like they're rolling a 20 every time, that kind of thing. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about something where it was just like, you know, something really devious. I'd love to hear those stories. And as always, if you have any suggestions for any kind of videos with RPG content, something I should review, something I should touch on, I'd love to hear those suggestions as well. Thanks as always for taking the time to watch this video, and yeah, stay tuned for more of these types of RPG content in the future from my channel. Have wherever you are, have a good one, take it easy, and I'll talk to you soon.